You've got to get up pretty early in the morning to speak to America's hardworking farmers and food producers. We should know. FLM Harvest is a strategic, full-service creative consultancy proud to reach more farmers, farmer boards, and food and commodity associations than any agency in the country. And we understand omni-channel as well as we understand the journey from field to fork. Most importantly, we connect clients to the audiences that matter to them.
Hi, I'm Ben Nully, and thanks for joining me for this edition of Meet the Lawmaker. On Wednesday, I visited with Republican Congressman Tom Emmer of Minnesota's 6th District, who is also the chair of the National Republican Congressional Committee.
Name's Tom Emmer. I've been in Congress now in the U.S. House of Representatives for the past, this is my 3rd term, so it's my 6th year. Grew up in Minnesota, live in Delano, Minnesota, which is about 40 miles outside of the downtown area. Where do you want me to go from there? Married, 7 kids, just launching number 7, just graduated from high school this spring.
As far as just some of the agriculture in your district, can you kind of talk about the commodities of agriculture in your area?
Happy to. Look, Minnesota's 6th Congressional District, more than 50% of the ground is still in agricultural production. You've got beef, you've got, do we get into the turkeys? A little bit of the turkeys up as you go more into central Minnesota. It's where Colin Peterson and I share a border. Obviously, you got beans, you got corn. We've got potatoes, right? The Petersons in Big Lake have a big potato operation. So it's pretty varied, and it's major in our district. In fact, the one that I left out is still the #1 industry in Stearns County, Minnesota, which I represent, and that's the dairy industry.
And as you look at the dairy industry, I know in the beginning of this COVID impacts we started seeing in, I believe it was March and April, dairy folks being impacted by some of these issues. What are some things you're doing to help those folks? And then on the other side of it, looking at the mental health of all this and the aspects of that too.
Yeah, well, dairy farmers have really been hit by by a lot of different things, right? The impacts of commodity prices and the economic downturn even before the pandemic hit. In March, I introduced a bill to modify the dairy margin coverage, the DMC program, to allow the option for farmers to make a one-time update to their production history, which would allow for a more accurate representation, I believe, of each producer's operation. The dairy margin coverage program is a critical tool that gives farmers the option. This would give farmers the option of updating their production history to better protect the smaller farms who have committed their livelihoods to dairy farming. That's one. The other thing is the Farmers and Ranchers Stress Assistance Network. We brought forward a proposal to expand it's called the Stress Act. The program was actually first authorized in 2008, but it never got funding for whatever reason, and it lapsed. It was included in the 2018 Farm Bill when FirstSan, I hate the acronyms of Washington, D.C., Ben, but it's a life that you have to live with. The alphabet soup of Washington, D.C. They call it FirstSan. It was reauthorized by the 2018 Farm Bill, and we were really proud of that. Recently, I introduced legislation to double that funding. When it was reauthorized, it was given $10 million. This is to be used at the local level to try and help create programming that it's twofold. One, allows our families in rural communities, it allows them access. You know, if you're concerned about a loved one, if you think that somebody might need help, the idea is to create access so that people know where to go to ask for help. The Department of Agriculture in the state of Minnesota had only one guy. I think they've tried to expand it now under the new administration, but only one guy responsible for this all across the state of Minnesota. And you can imagine with the stress that our farm families are experiencing, especially in the last few years, I think it's imperative that they have access not only to to notify people that they have a loved one, a friend, someone that they've encountered that they think is in trouble, but then to help that person get to a provider, someone who can actually provide important support and help to help them cope with the stresses that we're dealing with right now. But it's one of those things that there isn't a perfect answer, but you got to keep leaning in.
As far as looking at we talked about the challenges of just getting on Zoom here today, being one of the first times I've actually done this program on Zoom. But
you look good.
Talk about how rural broadband has become kind of front and center, and funding for that and build out of that is really important.
You know, Ben, some good things are going to come out of this crisis. And I think for our greater Minnesota families, I think they're going to realize the benefits if they can survive. If we can help them survive so that they can thrive again on the farms that they operate. By the way, we have to make sure that a country that can't feed itself doesn't last very long. So I think the population that you're talking to are the most important Americans right now. Despite all the other stuff you see going on, we've got to focus on this. But the broadband, so the good things that have come out of it, telehealth, telemedicine, right? We have, I believe, advanced 5 to 10 years faster than we would have under the old system because we had to. And we're not going to go backward now. Telemedicine is going to continue to be a thing. That's important to people who live in rural communities. You need to have access to that, and that means we got to finish that last mile of broadband. Education. We've now seen that education has to be done at times from home. And in order to do it, you've got to have access to the internet, right? Logistics, you name it, all these different things. And our farms are becoming more sophisticated by the day. So it's really important when we do the next infrastructure bill here in Congress that broadband is included in it. And I believe that's the umbrella that is over everything else. We've got to create private incentives to build out that last mile, as they call it, of broadband, to make sure that everybody has access to it so they can take advantage of the health opportunities, they can take advantage of the education opportunities, and they can continue to run their businesses more efficiently and successfully.
Looking at infrastructure, do you have any idea when we could see more talks about another infrastructure bill, what that looks like?
Yeah, there was a markup today in the Transportation Committee, but that bill is going to be, I think, voted on very partisan lines. It's unfortunate, but what's been happening is you get some great people in Congress, Ben, and they come from both parties. But we've reached a period of divisiveness where we've got an election off in November, and there are people that just have been refusing to put the American people ahead of their political agenda. And I think that the transportation's never supposed to be this way, right? And ag's never supposed to be this way. These are American issues. These aren't Republican, Democrat issues. But this bill that was marked up today, I think at least it will get the conversation moving because the administration definitely has a wish list of what they want to see done. If we could get some movement, I'm hopeful, but I'm gonna manage expectations for the people that are gonna watch this because Nancy Pelosi changed our calendar. She only has us coming back to Washington for 13 days between now and September. That makes it really hard to get these important things done. And I mean, I'm in Washington today because we had a financial services hearing. Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Fed, was testifying before the committee. I believe we need to be here to do our work. I believe if first responders are going to work every day, if our frontline healthcare workers are going to work every day, our farmers are going to work every day, our over-the-road truckers, grocery stores, Congress should be going to work every day. And then I would probably be more bullish that we're going to get that done, even in an election year, because it's really necessary.
Looking at some of the other things, I know trade is really important to folks in agriculture in your district. USMCA is expected to be set into force here July 1st. What are some benefits, and how will that help? I guess how will that help farmers in your district?
Oh, it's going to be huge. I mean, if you look at our largest export markets, Canada and Mexico are numbers 2 and 3. And by the way, if you think about it, so we're middle of June now. That's April. 3 months ago. 3 months ago, Ben, we were celebrating USMCA and a China agreement. You're talking about the 3 largest export markets for Minnesota's producers. We need to get back to that. I think USMCA is going to be very helpful, but I think we need to get that the Chinese issue needs to be resolved. The Chinese need us. And by the way, we need the Chinese when it comes to buying our wonderful produce.
You are chair of the Republican National Republican Congressional Committee. Just looking at some of the ag districts across the country as far as those go this year, what are some districts you're mainly focused on the Republican side that you'd like to see won, or districts you're really focused on?
Well, there's 54 districts that we're focused on, and it is kind of sad. America has kind of split, right? It's ag country has become more red. The cities, the high population density cities, have become more blue, and the suburbs have kind of been purple. You know, they kind of swing one way or the other. We've identified 54 seats. There's 435 seats in the House. Of those, because of redistricting, and I hope I don't irritate any of your listeners because I may sound partisan, but former President Barack Obama and Eric Holder, his former Department of Justice, his Attorney General, they go out and they talk about redistricting as if it's a federal issue. It's not. The states redraw their lines. Minnesota will redraw its lines for the next 10 years in the next legislative session. So that happens federally. But what's happened over the years is as the districts have been redistricted every 10 years, you have seen a vast majority of districts either get more red or more blue. So when they talk about swing districts, we now have probably just less than 100 of the 435 are true swing districts. And anybody watching, that doesn't mean that any district at any time, any given year, couldn't flip. It could. I mean, you get a charismatic candidate, you get the right candidate. You have cities that are trying to ban their police departments, right? And people suddenly stand up and go, wait a second, elections matter, and that could change the outcome. But if we just stick with the roughly 95 that are true swing seats, which means in any given year they can move 5 to 10 points one way, right? So you'd say it's a D+5 or a D+ or an R+5. It could go either way, though, depending on what the environment is and who the candidate is. We've got about 95 of those. We've identified 54. Why have we done those 54? The top 30, Donald Trump won in 2016. The next 20, Hillary Clinton won in 2016 by a very slim margin. The top 13 that Donald Trump won in that top 30, he won by 6 points or more. Many of them he won by double digits. Those are Republican seats. We won, I don't know if you saw this, but we won a special election in the suburbs of Los Angeles on May 12th. The last time Republicans flipped any seat in California, last time a Republican beat a Democrat in a Democrat seat was 22 years ago. Bill Clinton was still the president. So that should tell you, and by the way, we now have 45 Democrats sitting in seats that are actually better for Republican candidates than the one we won in California. And we only need 17 to retake the majority. So that's what we're looking at. Most of those, you got both Oklahoma's 5th district. It includes Oklahoma City, a piece of it. It's become more urban, but it also includes a great deal of ex-urban and rural ag. So districts like that, you're going to find them all over the place. There are some we have incumbents in, and one just came to mind because it's a very sad story. Andy Barr lost his 39-year-old wife last night. He represents Kentucky's 6th congressional district. it's built the same way, right? It's got some of Louisville, but then as you go out, you get into the ag country.
As far as these swing districts you talked about earlier, do you see those only shrinking as both sides kind of go farther and farther their own direction as we move forward here through these cycles?
So, I mean, I have interesting theories that nobody has to agree with. One, I think the division that you see, it actually goes back to the impeachment of President Clinton. You know, it's almost like, I'll give you this. I think it was 1998. Somebody's going to have to check their history books. But if you look back, Republicans and Democrats used to pass 12 appropriations bills out of the House to the Senate, out of the Senate, and then they'd have them to the president's desk on or before midnight on September 30th, the end of the fiscal year. That happened regularly. It hasn't happened since 1998, Ben. Why? Because I think it's been going, you know, the divisiveness, the political partisanship has become more and more bitter with each passing year. And I think right now we're at a point where I'm actually bullish on the future. I think that out of major pain, out of major disruption comes good. I think the American people actually are very positive in our nature. Look at the farming community. These people are some of the toughest Americans ever known. They just keep pounding ahead. I mean, they've got challenges like nobody else, and they just keep finding a blue sky and the cup is half full. I think that's going to happen again. So, no, I don't think it's going to continue to go apart because it can't. We've, I think, hit bottom, if you will, and I think the only place to go from here, Ben, is up.
Congressman, kind of wrapping up here, pretty busy most of the time. Maybe now's a little bit slower. But one of I caught looking at some of your caucuses, one of the caucuses you're on is the hockey caucus, being from Minnesota. That's kind of understood. But just kind of wrapping up here, what do you like to do for fun, whether that's hockey or just anything else to kind of take your mind of some of this stuff in D.C. going on day to day?
Hey, my life is probably like a lot of the people that you have listening. It's about family, right? Jackie and I have been blessed with 6 boys and 1 beautiful daughter. I told you, the 6 of them have launched. We got 1 in the Navy. We've got a Marine. It's our youngest is about to go off to college. Anything having to do with family, Ben. And then I do still skate. I skated. I used to joke. I actually skate better than I walk. You know, in fact, I bump into people all the time when I'm on my feet, but when I'm on skates, it's a thing of beauty. Although at age 59, I'm not quite, what's that country song? I'm not as good as I once was, but I'm as good once as I ever was. I think that probably applies to what I'm doing. And I still love to play. I don't know, that working around the house and hanging out with Jackie. That's my escape.
Well, Congressman, I appreciate your time today, and thanks for joining us.
Ben, thank you, and I look forward to the day when you and I actually get together in a place.
I was going to say, I miss going back and forth trying to track you guys down during votes, but it's been a lot different so far. But
I know. Yeah, we got to get back to living, and it's coming.
You can find more of these interviews at agripulse.com. Thanks for watching.